Alright, hello guys. I'm making this face-to-face video because I gotta address some things, regarding the incident last week with the Vagrant. Um, where do I start? I'm still hot because I just came in from it's getting humid out there. I just don't do very well in the heat. As I get older, it just gets worse. Yesterday was fine, but the humidity is coming back today. So, as most of you know, I had an incident with the Vagrant last week. It was last Friday. I was coming from Lynbrook, and I got on the bus to go north to ShopRite in New Hyde Park, and I took the N25 bus over there. Lynbrook was lively, full of life. They had the street closed off for outdoor dining. It was clean. It felt safe. Get on the bus. I get off by Union. On the bus ride over there, I see a vagrant that is hanging out at the corner of Hillside Avenue and New Hyde Park Road. But that's not the vagrant I had an issue with. I get off the bus at Union Turnpike and New Hyde Park Road, and there's a vagrant right by the bus stop. And I don't film him right away. I look at the I don't actually, filming him is not really the object of exactly what happened. It was filming the grass and just the general, him hanging out there is just part of the general thing. But I wasn't that close. I didn't zoom that close because I usually don't zoom that close on people for a reason. Even though this is where we're going to get into it. So we know what happened afterwards. We know that the vagrant confronted me, and I tried to walk away. And yeah, I called him a bum because he is a bum. All right. That's what he is. You have to understand where I'm coming from. So I go into ShopRite, and then I notice he's on a bus going south toward where I'm going, and I guess maybe he's kicked off the bus at Hillside Avenue. I don't know, but he's on the other side of the street. I'm on the south side of the street waiting for my bus, and I take video and some pictures of an abandoned store there with a shopping cart there, and then he thinks I'm taking pictures of him. And it was only until he got into my face and got close to me that I did actually take his picture. Let's talk about it. All right, let's talk about privacy in public, because some people are under the misconception that people aren't allowed to take your picture. You can take anything in public view outside is fair game for photography. Now, I'm not a street photography. I'm not interested in taking pictures of people at all whatsoever. Out of all the content I've created here, maybe 1% of it involves people in it. And those people are just on the street. There is no expectation of privacy in public. And this is something I'm tired of photographers getting harassed. I've been dealing with this harassment my whole life. All right, before I even got involved in this, back when I was filming trains, back when I was filming elevators, I got harassed over that. Now, elevators is one thing, but trains, when I was taking pictures of trains, and it was back in the mid-2000s, I'd get harassed. Sometimes the police. One time, the police even told me to leave. MTA police were called, and they said, "Oh, you really can't take pictures of trains," even though there's no rule against it. I'm tired of this. People have a right to photograph things in public, and we shouldn't be intimidated over it. And that's just really what it boils down to. That some people think that you're not allowed to take pictures in public, in a public place. And there's a particular commenter. He's been blocked. He knows who he is. He's been blocked. I let him comment. But if they're going through 30 comments a day from this guy, it's clearly obvious he's a troll and he's trying to intimidate me. He's obviously probably part of a certain demographic or supports a certain demographic. And a certain demographic doesn't like, freedom. They don't like freedom. They're anti-freedom. This guy basically thinks that, I shouldn't have the right to take pictures in public if there's people in the picture. What kind of... If there's a train incident, he tried to post a comment on one of my train videos when there was a major problem in Mineola and it was chaos and people were, what do you want me to do? I have to show the crowds. We have a right to document things. We are all the press. And when people aren't allowed to take pictures, we go into a very slippery slope toward a dictatorship. We've seen already the restrictions on many of our civil liberties in the name of stopping the spread of the coronavirus. And now you have people out there saying, I can't take pictures. Now look, this is because of my own safety. I'm not going to take pictures of vagrants anymore because of my own safety. All right. Never that I did take a picture and zoomed in on their face so you could see them. I just took a picture so you could see them hanging out, sprawled out, hanging around. Now people say, "Oh, that guy wasn't causing trouble. That guy wasn't causing trouble." He's a regular vagrant that causes problems. All right. Guess what happened today? I saw him in Hicksville. I didn't take a picture. I was just walking. I had my mask on, so he couldn't even see my face. And lo and behold, he's walking up one of the residential streets toward where the Broadway Mall is. And he starts just calling me names again, threatening me. He doesn't bring up anything about the picture. He just said, "You're a retard. You're a retard. Go to hell." You know, and that kind of stuff. So he does this to everybody. He acts like this to everybody. He's a bum. He's somebody who doesn't belong on the streets. And I got angry. I lost my temper. I'll admit I lost my temper because I'm frustrated with what's going on. I'm frustrated with the level of vagrancy that is unbelievably getting worse in the middle of the island. And the South Shore doesn't seem to have it. It doesn't seem to have it. I don't see them there. Maybe once in a while I see them there. But all the people who want to comment and tell me, "Oh, I don't have a right to document it," you try dealing with it every day and see how you feel. Obviously, these people don't deal with it every day because they have no clue as to what it's like to deal with these problems every day. Tired of neighborhoods being destroyed. I'm tired of it. But again, I can't document it anymore. I mean, just the other day, I saw Jeff literally right here in Mineola, right in front of the station house, just sprawled out like this. Sprawled out like this. All right? You know, his arms and legs all over the sidewalk, just lying there, like right in the middle of right in front of the station, all right, with his girlfriend. But I'm not showing you that. I'm not going to show you that. You've seen it a million times. I'm not going to show it to you anymore. I'm not putting myself at risk documenting these guys anymore. And women. They're not just men, they're women. There are all kinds of vagrants out there, all right? I can't document anymore. I'm frustrated because nobody else seems to talk about it, and I wanted to show you what it's like. But because these people are dangerous, because I can't just take a chance. I can't. And it's not about their privacy. They have no right to privacy. They're out sprawled down the street. They're out hanging out, causing problems. They don't have privacy. More than anyone, they don't have privacy because they're always out in the open. But hey, people will defend them because they don't deal with them. They're sitting pretty in their enclaves. They don't have to deal with it. They haven't to deal with these problems. So they have no idea what it's like. I had to sound off about that. And the other things that I've gotten criticism over, of course, are, "Oh, well, it must be, they don't believe in the whole Wall Street conspiracy thing." Well, see it with your own eyes. You go to the South Shore, everything's taken care of, everything's clean, there's no vagrants, businesses seem to be doing all right. And then you go to the middle of the island, and it's a wasteland. All right, it feels like a wasteland. You see the vagrants, you see the closed stores, you see the overgrown weeds and the trash, and just the bad state of the infrastructure all around. And what else are you supposed to conclude here? That it's just a coincidence? It's not just a coincidence. It's not just a coincidence. We know why. And then they brings up, well, it's because they make more money on the South Shore. Well, Great Neck's a pretty rich area, and actually that area that I was in where the vagrant was hanging out, at least part of the last information that I have according to the census, the median income is well over 6 figures. But because it's not lily white, that's why it doesn't get the same attention, because there's racism involved. And in the age of all these protests over George Floyd's murder by those police officers, there is so much more racism out there that seems to be forgotten about. And I'm upset because there's a lot of anger toward the police, and honestly, I don't think a lot of it is justified. The police, yeah, there is a lot of racism in the police, but honestly, I think there's worse racism in so many other places. Real estate? Where are the protests about the real estate discrimination? What about the blockbusting? What about all the other issues going on that I've talked about with the discrimination? And then there are the comments like, oh, well, the people that live there don't take care of their neighborhood. The trash in those neighborhoods that are in Hicksville, they're not coming from the people that live there. They're coming from the vagrants. Most of them are coming from the vagrants. And the other thing is, there probably is people who throw trash in those other areas like Wanta, but it gets cleaned up. It gets cleaned up. It gets the attention. You know, like, for instance, when there was graffiti on a bridge in Wanta, it got attention like right away and it was cleaned up. But when there's graffiti around here, it's forgotten.
Yep, and they already tagged the new sound barriers that they put in along the main line in Carl Place in Westbury.
And people do complain, but they're just ignored. Again, because of the color of their skin. Because it's not lily white. That's what's going on. Whether you want to see it or not, some of these people don't live here. Some of them live on the South Shore. They don't realize what it's like between the South Shore and the middle of the island. It's a huge difference. It's a huge, huge difference. And we know why it's happening. We know why it's happening. It's because of the demographics. And the fact is that in New York State, there's connections between white finance professionals and many various levels of government. So they get special treatment in their communities, whether you want to see it or not. It's true. It's not just a coincidence that Wantagh, Seaford, Lynbrook, Rockville Center, Massapequa hardly have any bumps. It's not just a coincidence that their grass is always mowed. It's not just a coincidence that their stations and their roads are taken care of, it, that their infrastructure looks good. While other areas that do happen to have money on the North Shore or toward the North Shore don't get the same kind of infrastructure, even though they have the median income is very similar, because of the diversity. That's what's going on. Because again, they're not connected. The professionals on the North Shore have less finance, more doctors, more scientists, surgeons, more, not so much Wall Street, whereas the South Shore is more Wall Street, and that's what's going on. Whether you want to see it or not, you don't live here. So, again, and it takes a lot. I don't like blocking people. I don't like doing it. But if people are going to constantly spam my channel and trying to intimidate me, that is what's going to happen. I'm not going to deal with it. Not with everything else I'm dealing with. I don't need to deal with you. You have a right to your opinion, but 30 comments a day, that's a little too much. A little too much. It's a serious problem. Whether you want to see it or not, that's why we're seeing what we're seeing. And I think that these protests, like I said, a lot of them aren't just about George Floyd. It's about the systematic discrimination. Even though I think that what's going on is you're now starting to see what's happened. I think is a certain demographic may have even hijacked the protests. Now this is just a possible idea to focus on just the police and not the other things, so they can kind of steer the attention away from the fact that they're the ones doing the discrimination. And you don't see them protesting the fact that there's discrimination against people of color with housing. I should have marched to that protest and saying I have a right to live here when they had that protest in Belmore. I should have had a sign that said that. All right, and then there's some people out there who think you don't have a right to live there. Sorry, that's a bunch of BS. All right, you can try. I don't believe in discriminating against people. All right, I don't believe in discriminating against them. All right, as long as they're law-abiding citizens, what does it matter what their disability is or what the color of their skin is? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Everybody has a right to be safe. Now, yeah, if I had an opportunity to live on the South Shore, I would take it, but I don't. And some people are saying, oh, you've got to get out of there. There's nothing I can do. Understand, there's nothing I can do. I can't do anything. I don't have a choice to where I live. And I know that Mineola has some problems, but it is still not. I still am grateful every day that I'm not in Westbury anymore, because Westbury was way worse. Westbury had gangs. Westbury had way more illegals. Westbury had horrible transportation. So Westbury was worse in so many ways and still is. But it just frustrates me when I see my town struggle, my town being discriminated against because of our diversity. And that is what's going on. That is why we're being discriminated against. And then somebody else said, well, it's a major transportation hub. That's why you have the vagrants over there. Yeah, but you know what? So is Lynbrook. Lynbrook's a major transportation hub. You have You have the Babylon line stopping, you have the Long Beach line stopping, then you have the N25, N4, N31, N32 bus routes going through. That's a major hub. Same thing for Rockville Center, that's a major hub too. You have the N15, the N16, the N4, the Mercy Medical Shuttle, you have the Babylon line, and even Babylon itself is a major hub. And yeah, there's a little vagrancy there, and it's always gotten attention whenever it's tried to flare up. Gets taken care of right away, but in the middle of the island, it's forgotten. How come the Mineola Intermodal Center, which is, I think, owned by the MTA, I think it's owned by the MTA, has lights out all over the place, lights out all over, but you don't see that on the South Shore? Why is that? You tell me, why do you think that is? Why is that doesn't happen on the South Shore? Why are all the lights working on the South Shore, but not Mineola? Why is that? I don't, don't you see what's going on? This is about politics. This is about connections. It's about the fact that a certain demographic, Wall Street is integrated with New York State's government. And where those Wall Street people live, they get the attention. If they see something wrong, it goes right to the person and they fix it. When we see something wrong, we have to constantly, time and time again, try to get their attention because we don't have the connection that they have.
In other words, we don't have the political clout, so we don't get the results. We just don't get noticed.
In the middle, we don't have that connection. We don't have that connection in Mineola. We don't have that connection. There are certain things that the railroad has done that has given us that I'm glad. Like, for instance, the hand sanitizer station at Mineola, and there's one at Hicksfield too. I have not seen those on the South Shore, and that's good. I'm glad that God forbid we have something that the South Shore doesn't have. The South Shore is just, they're in their own little enclave. They're in their own little world. Wall Street has been doing great. We had a couple of drops here and there, but every time it drops, it just goes right back up again. Like I said, they seem to be in their own, insulated in their own little world. You got all these stores going out of business. Forget about the pandemic. They just constantly just inflate their own egos and stocks, and they're arrogant. I don't like Wall Street. I have a right not to like them. I don't like them. They're very arrogant. It's a very disgusting, arrogant culture that they have on Wall Street, and the fact is that they've taken over the South Shore, and the South Shore wasn't always like that. I guess that's kind of like where it comes from too. Is that I grew up in Wantagh. It wasn't like that when I was growing up. It was mostly white, yes, but it wasn't all rich people. It was mostly just middle class white people. Now it's all finance professionals. They've all just set up their enclave there. It's literally, what they're doing is they're balkanizing Long Island into their enclave, and then the places where everybody else lives, where things aren't taken care of. Whether you want to see it or not isn't the story. I've been telling you this, my whole point of view, what I see from my point of view. And they've also said, oh, you seem more miserable now than when you were living in Westbury. Well, in some ways, yes, because when I was in Westbury, I didn't really see the extent of what's going on. And now that I'm out of Westbury, and I see it's not just Westbury, it's the whole middle of the island.
Yes, let me also add that I didn't notice how bad it was. And honestly, I didn't realize how endemic racism was. And, in some ways, I was kind of ignorant. And once I got out of Westbury, I realized there really is a lot of racism that still exists, and it's much worse than I could have ever imagined.
Being targeted for ruin, that upsets me a great deal, and that's something that obviously sometimes it's called the burden of knowledge. Sometimes when you just have too much knowledge about something, it just becomes like a burden of knowledge. You know too much now. You know too much. So it's just like with some things you just wish you never knew. And it must be nice living in an enclave and not knowing that the middle of the island is suffering with these problems. It is. What can I say? It's. Look, there are things that I don't like about the middle of the island, but there's nothing I can do. I live here. It is, and so will all the other people live here. They don't have a choice. They can't live on this. Not everybody can live on the South Shore. There's not enough room for everybody to live on the South Shore. And while it feels like, I've given up on trying to change the middle of the island, I'm just going to document what I see, because nobody else is talking about it. And I'm going to continue to document what I see, obviously not documenting the vagrants themselves. I'm not going to be documenting the vagrants. If there's a sign that a vagrant was there, I'll document that, but I'm not going to document the actual vagrants anymore because it's just too dangerous. And this is where I got to blame the government. Again, Laura Curran, she's the county executive. She has done a terrible job with this. She has let the vagrancy get out of control. I blame the governor a lot for it because of the governor's policies regarding the way the police respond to things. I'm of the school of thought that if somebody's out on the streets, that they're a danger to themselves and others, that they should be removed from the streets. But people like Andrew Cuomo and Laura Curran think that these people, well, you can't just force them to get help, and I disagree with that. And it's to their own benefit. If they realized they couldn't do drugs, that they couldn't be a vagrant and do what they do and cause problems, that they realized that there were consequences to doing those things, and they'd wind up in jail each and every time, they would realize that this is the wrong thing to do, and that they get help and be a law-abiding member of society. But instead, they choose not to because there are no consequences for them breaking the law. And that's what happens when you don't have law enforcement. You have all these problems. And I want to thank Kevin from MTA Project. He put a great video together talking about what happened to me, so check that out. I have it in the cards. And I thank him very much for talking about it because it's really serious what's happening to the economy. And I'm really worried about New York City too. I spoke about it in the other video that I'm very concerned about New York City. There have been a number of articles now that a lot of people are moving out of New York City. And most of those people are going to be the people who have money, who can afford to. So they're going to wind up driving the prices in places, up the places like Long Island. I mean, that Enclave is going to get more popular. You could have 50 people fighting over one house in Montauk. It wouldn't surprise me. That's the way it's going. That house could go for $1 million or more, just because they want to be in that Enclave. I don't think it would be nice if maybe some of them could go to the middle of the island and maybe gentrify things here a little bit. But the way these people are, they just want to be with their own kind, they're moving out of the city, and it's just what it's gonna do. I think I'm actually even more upset from an environmental standpoint. There's going to be a lot of pressure on developers now to build more residential developments and knock down woods, whether it be New Jersey, Connecticut, Long Island, or upstate New York. And that's going to be terrible for the environment. We have a lot of people out, and like I said, I can't blame people for wanting to leave the city, but the problems in the city caused by both Mayor Bill de Blasio and Governor Cuomo. The mayor, for handicapping the police, he's never supported the police. And look, like I said, I'm a little concerned about the rise of this anti-police mentality that's going on, because if we don't have laws in this country, we have anarchy, and the police are there to enforce the law. There are bad officers, just like there's bad in every company. There's bad bus operators, there's bad police officers, there's bad store employees. I mean, there's always going to be bad. All right. Obviously, police need to do a better job at making sure that those bad police officers are not police officers. But to defund the police, I think, is a terrible idea, and it's going to result in the city going back to the days of the 70s and the 80s. Oh, it's already going back to the 70s and the 80s. It's already going back. Crime is way up. There's vagrants everywhere. People don't feel safe anymore, and that's why they're leaving. And the shutdown, this is where we go to Andrew Cuomo. The shutdown has gone on for too long. I understand. Look, he constantly touts New York is still going down. We're the lowest COVID, even though we weren't the highest, as far as the rates of new infections go. But I don't think the shutdown I think the shutdown, in the beginning, the shutdown was to stop the hospitals from getting overloaded, and I understand why it was done. But that shouldn't have gone on for more than 1 month. After that, things should have opened up, but you should have been very strict about social distancing and about the mask wearing. So instead of punishing businesses for trying to open and survive, you punish the people who refuse to comply with curbing the spread of the disease. Like, people who don't want to wear masks, and I see some of them out there. Not a lot, but I see some of them. And these other states that are going up, and I wouldn't say that it's a skyrocketing. I've seen some of the numbers in Florida and Texas and Arizona. It's not a huge skyrocketing, but the reason why that, first of all, is because they never got the brunt of the disease. The brunt came to New York because our president failed to shut down all the airlines, which flew in from Europe and then infected New York with the disease. And it spread in New York, and now it's in the other countries. The other issue with these other states is they never enforced. When they opened up, they never even had mask guidelines. I remember in April I was watching some guy in Utah, and he went to the supermarket, and he had his mask on, but he was like shocked. He's like, "I'm the only one with a mask on. What's wrong with people?" I don't. I think we're missing the whole point of this. We've got to curb the spread of the disease. The shutdown was to do the fastest thing to stop the hospitals from getting overwhelmed. We did that, all right. But then the shutdown should have been lifted much sooner, so the businesses could open, people could go back to work, and you'd have the masks and the social distancing guidelines, or the physical distancing guidelines. If everybody's wearing a mask and everybody's 6 feet apart, what is the difference if they're in a store or they're in a mall? But I'm really concerned about the economy here, and this shutdown has really hurt the economy in the middle of the island, because the middle of the island, generally, the middle of the island's economy is based around a lot of these big shopping centers like Roosevelt Field, and they've been closed for 3 months now. Broadway Commons closed. A lot of these stores are closed. Even IKEA, which could reopen, has not reopened to let people inside yet. They're still doing pickup. I walked by there today, and they're still doing pickup. So I'm very concerned about the way things are going, and the state of the economy, and all these stores that are closing. And we're going to have a lot of empty stores in middle of the island. South Shore, their restaurants, because their downtowns are not based on big box retail, and because they have it's a hot spot, people want to be there. Should I say a cool spot, because it's cooler on the South Shore. People want to be there, and so their restaurants do well. I'm sure everybody's hurt, even the South Shores are. I know that. But I think the middle of the island is just taking this much worse because of the way things have been set up here. And yes, like I said before, if I could be on the South Shore, if I could be in Lynbrook, boy, I would do it in a heartbeat. But I can't. I don't have a choice to where I live, and I am, and I have to, and I'm grateful that I'm here. I'm in Mineola instead of someplace worse, because most people in my situation are in places even worse. So I don't want to be ungrateful for that. There's still, Mineola has good people in it. It's not a bad town. It's just a neglected town. It's an ignored town, and we deserve better. We really do. And I'm hoping maybe we'll see what happens the next year or two, the elections and stuff. I hope Laura Curran loses, because she's been a disaster. I think that things have gotten worse. That's when things started. Actually, that's when things started getting worse than the old, when Laura Curran was elected, and then I noticed things getting worse and worse. Things just started changing quick with the way the police were. It's like the Democrats, they just don't support law enforcement. And look, I don't hate the police. I don't believe in defunding the police. I do believe that there is racism in the police. There are racist police officers, and there is definitely police brutality out there, not just against blacks, but against many people, and it needs to be addressed. But the fact is that there is so much more discrimination out there than just the police. And I'm speaking about this till I'm blue in the face. We need to do something. We need to do something to really fix the whole system in this country. The whole system needs to be fixed. It's not just about the racism. It's about the economic disparity and all of that stuff. And the problem is that it's so entrenched in both political parties. And it just is. I'm not going to be documenting the homeless anymore as far as showing them. But if I wanted to, I have every right to. And some people think I don't, but I do. And for those who want to, criticize being fed up with it, you try dealing with them every day. I understand it's easy to feel sorry for them, but many of them choose to live the way they do because they don't want to follow the laws. And if we are to be a civilized society, then there must be consequences for people who break the laws. And if they want to continue to break the laws, then jail is the place for them to be. And eventually, they'll realize how much jail sucks and how much better they'd be if they just follow the laws, get into a program, and help themselves. But without law enforcement, it's like a kid with no parent. They're not going to learn. And that is the problem that we have here in New York State, whether you like it or not. And it's only going to get worse with these, Democrats in charge. And it is the irony in it is, of course, is that it is those minorities that will suffer the most consequences, because the white rich areas on the South Shore, with the finance professionals, they'll continue to be safe and have a relatively decent quality of life. It'll be the diverse communities in the middle of the island and elsewhere that will suffer with the increased crime that the vagrancies bring. They'll suffer with the lost businesses. They'll suffer with all those things, and it's not fair. It's not fair. But as far as myself goes, no, I'm not going to deal with these people anymore because it's too dangerous to document them. But if you want to, I can't tell you not to. But I'm not doing it. I'm done documenting them. But I will continue to talk about how our towns are struggling here.
And they've now set up outdoor dining on Mineola Boulevard at some of the restaurants. But guess what? All the tables are empty. Nobody wants to come.
It's just not fair what's happening. It's not fair. And people say, well, life is not fair. Well, I've never accepted that. My mother used to tell me that. Why don't you accept that life is not fair? I never accept it. I never accept it. But you know what? You have to just try to do the best you can. At least knowing I tried to document it. But it's up to you, the public, to make the changes in the government by electing people who will support enforcement of the law, that will support getting rid of these entrenched systems of discrimination and segregation, and support, of course, preservation of our environment and public transportation. And we don't see that. There's one other thing I'll talk about that I'm going to make a separate video about as well. But Suffolk County has a budget deficit, and of course, what are they going after? People like us. So they're going to go after buses, they're going to go after parks, they're going to go after services for low-income people, but they're never raising taxes on the rich, right? That's never in their heads. So, they call themselves Democrats, but they're all looking out for one kind of person, and that is the rich white finance professional. And we have to say enough is enough, and of course the finance professionals don't like it. It's too bad. Everybody deserves to be treated fairly, and right now there's just too much control from Wall Street. And we have to just get rid of Wall Street, get Wall Street out of our lives. They should not have no business in control of the way our government runs, none at all. They have their little world has no bearing on what the rest of us deal with, while we're going through hell right now, and we continue to go through hell and worse.
And yes, these surroundings are very depressing. It's depressing to see the table set up and no one there. It's depressing to see no life. It's depressing to see a station with graffiti, and it's depressing to see trash from vagrants all over the place. But there's nothing I can do. I have to deal with it and just try to escape it as much as I can.
It would entail a long legal battle that I don't feel like getting involved in. It's just going to be too much stress for me right now. Obviously, I'm going to have to avoid certain areas and avoid certain situations from now on, and spend as much time as I can on the South Shore. It doesn't mean I'm never in the middle of the island, but I have to do what's right so I can feel better. Some people, they don't understand. That's the other thing, that they don't understand what it's like to suffer from the depression and be around these things. It literally just, this whole thing, with the COVID, the coronavirus, the shutdown has been absolutely traumatic for me. Um, and I'm sure it has for everybody. Um, but to see society just shut down, um, it's just very upsetting to see.
I mean, so many of these places I have fond memories of, going to, like the Broadway Commons. And every other night I dream about being able to go back in there. And I even had a dream that Macy's was back. But Macy's is gone. They've even taken the sign down. It's just so depressing.
The amount of control that our elected officials have exercised is very concerning. I don't think that they have the right to have such far-reaching powers to shut down businesses and shut things down. I don't think they should have those rights. I think that you got to leave it at, you got to wear a mask, you got to distance, you got to leave it at those two things. But beyond that, your power should not go any further than that. And the thing is, they say we want to stop the spread of this virus. They want to say we want to stop the spread of the coronavirus. And yet, even here in New York, I see so many ways that the virus can be spread. All right, stores have been mandated closed, not quote unquote non-essential stores have been mandated closed now for months. But yet, when you go to the supermarket, there's still no hand sanitizer when you walk in, or when you check out. There's no hand sanitizer by the checkout. Thinking about all the germs that gather on that could be COVID. Why hasn't that been required? Instead of mandating all these other stores closed, Governor, why haven't you said, you know what? Supermarkets have to be required to have hand sanitizer when you walk in and when you leave. Any store, that should be a requirement. But no, that's not a requirement. And people wearing masks. What about people who don't want to wear masks? There are no consequences for them, it seems.
Enforcement of the mask directive, especially on the Long Island Railroad, has been almost non-existent. I see people on the train that don't have masks, and the conductor walk right by, and they don't say anything. They don't say anything. The only place that seem to be stricter about it is the bus. The bus operators do a good job at making sure people have the mask on, but the Long Island Railroad, I don't see any enforcement there.
You have people out there that just don't want to wear the mask. They go in and they put other people's health at risk. If you're around other people in an indoor space, you have to wear the mask. And the governor, again, these are the two ways this virus spreads. Through the droplets when you cough and when you speak and when you breathe. So you put the mask on, not so much to protect you from the others, it's to stop those droplets from getting out. All right? And if they're on your hands, you use hand sanitizer, which kills COVID-19, coronavirus. But there's no requirements for any of those things. Instead, he just wants to go after shutting businesses down. This is what our governor is. So it leads me to believe that it's more. It seems less about health and more about just control. Because if you really wanted to stop the spread of the virus, instead of shutting so many things down for so long, you would have mandated these things that are proven by the CDC to stop the spread of COVID. But you never did. And neither did New Jersey. In fact, I don't think any state has any really strict mask-wearing policy. Yes, there is, executive order that Cuomo signed required, but there's no enforcement of it. We've only seen enforcement of businesses that open and defy the orders. But we don't see enforcement of the actual things that spread the disease. So it just makes no sense to me. It's just more about control. But I'll admit, I will give Governor Cuomo credit for acknowledging that he made a mistake with putting the COVID patients in the nursing homes. It takes a big man to acknowledge that. Now, if only Cuomo would admit the mistakes he's made on these other things, maybe I would have a lot more respect for him, and maybe he could even earn my vote back. But he's got to realize that this shutdown has gone for too long. He's got to admit it. He's got to acknowledge the economic harm it's done, and focus on those things that actually stop the spread of the virus itself. And as far as again, it's very important. If you're either 6 feet away, the rule is this: you're either 6 feet away or you have your mask on. That's it. So if you're in a situation where you really can't wear a mask in an indoor place like a restaurant, then the tables have to be 6 feet apart. But that can be done in many of these fast food places and even some other types of restaurants. Some others will have to have their tables moved outside, obviously, and they could work on expanding their spaces to survive. But, and the good news is we're going into phase 3 in a week from now. So we'll be able to sit inside a restaurant 50% capacity. So that's very good. But the malls still won't be allowed to be open. So as long as the malls are closed, the middle of the island is going to remain a dead ghost town. And I hope when the malls, once they are allowed to reopen, who says they will even reopen? Look, there are stores that, even though they've been allowed to reopen, haven't. Because maybe they don't have the money to reopen. What about those places? You know? So, I guess that's been my thoughts. About a 40-minute video on this. But, you know, look, it's not that I don't care about the middle. I do. I do care about the middle of the island. But I think that I have to think about just the fact that this is just the way it's going to be. And you're just going to have to try to accept it, try to make the best of it that you can, try to avoid confrontations with the vagrants, all right? I'm not going to document them anymore. And try to enjoy the things, you know, and hopefully maybe, with just a little luck, that maybe when the third track is complete, maybe when there are changes that are politically made in our government, that the middle of the island will become a much nicer place once again. And of course, the middle of the island, of course, offers something that is priceless to me, and that, of course, is the Pine Barrens, whereas the South Shore doesn't offer that, and that's a big negative. So, again, the Pine Barrens mean everything to me. Most important thing, some people will joke around about it. Oh, why does he say great shapes or delicious shapes so much? It's just my reaction to just the awesome beauty of the place. If you can't appreciate that, I'm sorry. So that's going to be it. Take care. Thank you for watching.